Have you ever wondered what it's like to work in law enforcement? Here on Behind the Star, we share stories about the Orange County Sheriff's Office, Central Florida's largest law enforcement agency. From forensics to dispatch to the deputies on patrol, we'll talk to the brave men and women who protect our community. This is Behind the Star, the official podcast of the Orange County Sheriff's Office. Welcome to Behind the Star, the official podcast of the Orange County Sheriff's Office. My name is Jon Busdeker, your host, and we're going to get right into it today because we have a serious topic that I think everybody in the world is really thinking about, which is the coronavirus and how it affects our daily lives. And so we're going to talk today with Lt Bill Bartlett. He's the lieutenant in charge of emergency management and Homeland Security here at the Sheriff's Office. Thanks, Lt Bartlett, for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
And so, I wanted to kind of go through what our role is here at the Sheriff's Office. If you've listened to a lot of our podcasts, you'll know Bill from a previous one that we did during the Hurricane Dorian, I believe.
Correct.
And we talked all about emergency management then, but this is a little bit different, Lt Bartlett. Let's just start from the very beginning. I mean, what is the role of the EOC and what does EOC stand for in the midst of a pandemic?
So the EOC is the Emergency Operations Center, and that's where we run pretty much the entire operation out of for this coronavirus. I know the county has an emergency operations center, the state has an emergency operations center, and right now we're sitting in our agency emergency operations center.
And I should note, you and I are a little farther apart than I would normally be, but that's because We've been told this is what we're supposed to do.
Right, correct. So the role is we would be basically running our agency response out of this emergency operations center. Right now, we are not activated. That may change in the near future. Obviously, this is a very fluid situation right now. The county did activate their emergency operations center last, I believe it was Friday. They went to a partial activation, meaning not everybody's in there. Each group has an ESF function, is basically what it's called. And law enforcement is ESF. It's a emergency support function.
Okay.
And we're ESF 16, which is law enforcement. So obviously, not every group is needed right now due to this being a coronavirus. It's something a lot of groups are monitoring right now, but they don't have staff there. It's a very small activation right now. I know we're there, the hospitals are there, the fire department's there. Just a group that's deeply involved in this at this point.
So you say being activated. Where does that come from? I mean, how do you know when it's time to be activated here at the Sheriff's Office?
So we'll make a decision on when we'll activate here at the Sheriff's Office. Once we have personnel, if they open up, let's just say food distribution points or testing sites, we'll be responsible for providing security there. So that's a little bit above a normal operation, day-to-day operation at the Sheriff's Office. So this is maybe made to send personnel here to start running our operation and our response to that.
And so once again, when you say activate, what happens? So we're in the EOC right now, which is sort of a section of central ops here at our headquarters here at the Sheriff's Office, and it's sort of a part of the building where there's TV screens and computers. And so when you say activate, does that mean more people will be in this part of the building working 24/7 on this?
Correct. And it may not be 24/7. It may just be Monday through Friday. It may be 7 days a week, maybe daytime hours. It just depends on truly the incident and what we're running at the time. We do have a critical incident management team called the CIMT team, and they will be responsible for coming in here and staffing a lot of these positions in here and helping run that operation. So an activation would be, we would call Captain Mitch Shaban is responsible for that team, does a great job with it, and he would send personnel here. Depending on how large scale it is or small, it may just be a two, 3 people, or we could have 40, 50 in here. So just depends on the situation.
And one thing I also forgot to mention at the very beginning of this is Lt Bartlett is a very busy man, and so he may or may not get some phone calls during this podcast. So we may have to start and stop here and there. So I just wanted to put that out there because as much as I enjoy doing a podcast, I know there are people out there that need your attention. So if you get a phone call, of course you take that phone call. So Lieutenant, let's go back a few weeks or even maybe a month or so. And, we've been hearing about the coronavirus, here and there. There's reports from China and then with Italy and now the United States. I mean, what has the Sheriff's Office and you in particular, what have you been doing for the last, 2 weeks, month, kind of watching and monitoring this?
So we've been in touch with pretty much all the federal, state, and local agencies, both fire departments, health departments, hospitals, and whatnot. And it's getting more and more phone conversations and meetings are scheduled, obviously, as we start facing more and more of an impact. We started monitoring the situation really when it started really blowing up over in China, realizing that this could have a potential impact here in Central Florida. So we started just monitoring, watching the CDC reports. We've really been in touch with them. We've just been really maintaining contact with them and going off of their recommendations. So obviously, as we started out, recently over the last week, we've gone from large-scale gatherings to 250 to 100 to 50, and now down to 10.
Yeah.
So I mean, that truly has changed a lot of the way we are doing things here at the sheriff's office, simply for that reason.
And all over the country and all over
place.
the county. And I know here at the sheriff's office, we've had some community barbecues, and we've canceled all of those events because they attract hundreds of people, and so
Correct.
I believe we've put all of our public events on hold as well.
Correct, we have.
And so I guess this might sound like a dumb question, but I'm going to ask. I mean, how is this different than a hurricane? How is preparing for this pandemic different than a hurricane?
It's completely different because a hurricane, we start having tracks and have an idea of time of impact and how quickly this is going to spread, when we're going to face the impacts of a storm. This is completely different because we really just don't know right now.
Plus, we probably have a lot of practice with hurricanes.
A lot of practice with hurricanes. We do have that down. This is something, fortunately, we've been... or we could say, unfortunately, we faced these incidents before in the past with the H1N1 virus, the swine flu, SARS, and everything else over the last decade. There's been several number of outbreaks. So we have developed a plan here at the sheriff's office in our critical incident management guide. So we do have a plan and an idea of how we're going to respond to it.
Is this one different, though? From those H1N1 and swine flu and SARS?
It's different, but it's still a pandemic. So the way we handle it's different. Different PPE maybe, personal protection of equipment is what that stands for. We may have just different, and it goes by virus to virus and depends on what the CDC recommends and the level of protection our personnel will need.
Can you talk about that? I mean, so a lot of people that work at the sheriff's office are deputies. We have 2,500 employees here. I think 1,600 or so are deputies. They are out and about most days. They interact with lots of different people of different stages in life and different all parts of our civilization, I should say, they work with. So can you talk about some of the precautions that our deputies take when they're working during a pandemic like this?
So right now with this outbreak of the coronavirus, we're just doing exactly as the CDC says. We're encouraging hand washing, the social distancing, staying away from sick people. If you're not feeling well, don't come to work. We don't need you spreading anything. I mean, not just the coronavirus, just the normal flu that's going around right now as well. Those kind of things that we're really encouraging our personnel to do if they've recently traveled to one of the countries. And when I say recently, within the last week or two.
And we have some. No, I'm not going to name them, but I've seen their photos, and a lot of them, you plan a vacation for months and months and months, and then I know some of them went before the outbreak really became an outbreak in certain countries, and they had traveled, and now they're back, and now they got to sort of deal with the ramifications here.
Sure, we have several that were overseas just as the coronavirus really started its outbreak and became the pandemic that it is now. Mm-hmm. We had several personnel that were overseas in some of those countries affected, and they've recently returned within the last week. So while they were gone is really when those countries faced the issues that they did, so they could potentially be exposed. So they are doing exactly as the CDC says, and they're quarantined for 14 days and staying inside, and we're monitoring them every day.
Yeah, and once again, I mean, we have so many employees that work with each other, and because they're law enforcement, I'm sure you don't want one to get sick, and then you have they work in smaller quarters and they work together, and now you got 15 people sick that are law enforcement because we will need them to work just like anywhere else. But we have sort of a special circumstances, I think, with a lot of our employees here at the sheriff's office. So let's say somebody who is a deputy or a civilian, but let's concentrate on our deputies right now here at the sheriff's office. Let's say one of them does come in contact with, they think, somebody who does think they have the coronavirus, what precautions or what's supposed to happen then? Is there sort of a protocol that we have?
There is. If they believe they've come in contact with somebody, we've been working very closely with our risk management. They have done a phenomenal job with this right now, pushing information out and monitoring people that could have potentially been exposed. So they just notify their supervisors, and we notify risk management, make them aware of it, and then they will be followed up with their medical staff and whatnot from there.
What about their patrol vehicles? Let's say they arrested somebody and they say, well, I have the coronavirus. Whether they do or not, I don't know. That's probably a whole nother sort of set of circumstances. But I mean, do they have to quarantine the patrol car? Do they have to clean it out? I mean, what happens then?
So ironically, I had a phone call about an hour ago regarding this. Several weeks ago, we found out about a system that's used to clean the inside of vehicles. It basically provides a decontamination mist inside a vehicle. I know the fire department uses it because they obviously face several illnesses a year, outbreaks between flus and other bloodborne pathogens and whatnot. But we now have the ability to potentially use some of those systems. So if we have somebody that has transported somebody that might have coronavirus, we have the ability to use one of those machines to disinfect and decontaminate our car and equipment.
Yeah, because I really want to stress this. I think sometimes people who, like me, I work in an office, I edit video, I do podcasts. I'm not in contact daily or close contact with people all the time, whereas a lot of our deputies, I mean, that's their job. I mean, especially if something happens, I mean, they have to get physically close to people. And so I imagine they're at a higher risk than somebody like me who can come to work, go home, and kind of stay away from people if I have to. It's hard to stay away from somebody if they're committing a crime and you got to go stop them.
Right, correct. We still have our normal law enforcement operations. We're still maintaining and running at 100%. So,
however, we are asking residents who are victims of crimes, certain crimes, lost property, if it's a vehicle burglary that's not in progress, we are asking the public not to come to the sheriff's office to file a report. We're hoping that they do it online instead.
Yeah, absolutely. Go to OCSO.com and you can make an e-report right there for minimal crimes and to report lost property and stuff like that. So makes it easier on everybody.
Yeah. So how about you? What's your typical day like right now? I mean, who are you reporting to? Who are you checking in with? Who are you talking with? How are you monitoring all this?
Right now, everybody. I don't think there's a minute that goes by right now we're not in a meeting or phone conference or whatnot. We're truly in constant communication right now. Normal hours are supposed to be, Monday through Friday, daytime hours. I was on phone conferences up until about 11 o'clock the other night. They had a 6 o'clock phone conference, and I got one here in about 30 minutes out of Washington, D.C. So we are truly in contact with everybody from the White House all the way down to local, communities and whatnot. So
you're right, because, I mean, there's so many different agencies and levels that I'm sure this sort of touches, because you just said, you're going to talk with Washington, D.C. and the federal level, but even at the federal level, you have the CDC and you have FEMA and you have the National Institute of Health, and then you start getting down to the state level. You got the governor and you got the Department of Health, correct. And then you got the county, and then you got all the cities here in Orange County that I'm sure you have to talk with too. Obviously Orlando's the largest one, but there's Winter Park and there's Maitland's. I guess how do you sort of handle all that?
So we just keep going. A lot of the information we thank God for email. It's a great thing. We can get information out quickly that way. Like I said, these phone conferences, we may be on the phone conference, like I said, with Washington, D.C. in a little bit, and I'm sure that within another hour or two, that information will be requested, and we'll be on another phone conference, passing that information out as well. So it truly is very busy right now with everything. And, Orlando being the way it's structured, just as a tourist destination.
And this was my next question, actually.
Right.
We have 1.5 million people that live here in Orange County, roughly, and, even more that live around Orange County. Correct. That, commute every day in and out of our county. But we also have thousands and thousands and thousands of tourists here every single day. Right now, Disney World and Universal and SeaWorld, they're all closed, but a lot of those tourists might still be here because they booked their tickets and their plane trips and their hotels. They might not be at the parks right now, but they're still here in our county. How does that affect your job here in the EOC?
It does to an extent. I mean, I'll give you a personal story. We have some very good friends of ours that were here from England. They've been here for several weeks, and of course, over the last several weeks, the United Kingdom started getting impacted greatly by the coronavirus. So they've kind of missed it there, and they're on their way back, but they weren't sure as of. They actually flew out this morning. As of last night, they weren't sure if they were going to get out. So. We have a lot of people that could potentially be stuck here. So we're working. We have the ability through. That's the beauty of the Emergency Operations Center is we can get those people that might be stranded some resources to help them find either a way back or another place to stay in the meantime. That's the beauty of having something like the Emergency Operations Center because they're all in one room rather than have to pass the phone and who can we get in touch with and get passed down the line 100 times. You just turn and 3 seats down from you is somebody that can help them out. So,
do you work with the airport as well? I know the airport is under Orlando Police jurisdiction, I believe.
Right.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but do you work with them as well? Because once again, if people fly in here or fly out, honestly, they're going to be in the county. Do you work with the airport?
Somewhat we do.
Okay.
But GOA does have the Greater Orlando Aviation Authority does have a seat at the Emergency Operations Center. So again, that's the ability in the that we have right there being in one room.
So right now it's about 12:30 on March 18th. So once again, if you're listening to this podcast a few days from now, things could have completely changed since I make this next question. But how about the next 15 days? I mean, what can you expect? I mean, once again, you're not a fortune teller. I know you can't predict it exactly, but I mean, what do you think the next 15 days is going to look like here in Orange County?
It's going to be interesting. I know the theme park's being closed all the way through the end of the month. That's really cut down a lot. I know with the recent orders for the bars and whatnot to close down, it's going to be very interesting. I hope we don't have a massive outbreak of coronavirus. I hope that a lot of these steps that have been taken really minimize the effects of it. All in all, it is out there. It's something we need to watch and monitor. The numbers right now are not as large as the common flu. So we the big thing is we just don't want to overreact and we don't want to underreact. We're really hoping from a law enforcement perspective, our involvement with the virus is we're going to have a lot of businesses closed down. We need to maintain observation and protect those businesses because there are going to be people that may try and take advantage of the fact that those businesses are closed. So, you're looking at civil unrest as a possibility. People breaking into stores. On the flip side of that, we have a lot of people that are home now.
Yeah.
So residential burglaries are something we might see a decrease in. So really we have to maintain and just kind of see what's going to go on. Next 15 days are going to be very interesting. This is something that hasn't been done ever here in Orlando. So this is definitely uncharted territory for us, and we're really going to have to watch and kind of see what issues other places are having, and that's why it's important we watch around the world to see what other areas have faced that have gone through this. Typical pandemics, they say, are 6 to 8 weeks. So we're at about a week and a half into it now, 2 weeks. If you look at the 1918 influenza outbreak, it was you look at the curve on that, it's a very big spike, and what they're trying to do is minimize that spike because we don't want to overrun the healthcare system, and that's the main reason why a lot of these steps have been taken about the self-quarantining and staying inside, and a lot of the theme parks have closed and restaurants are closing.
You mentioned overreact and underreact. How do you know you're doing the perfect reaction? Or is that just something you have to look at 6 months from now and look back and decide, okay, we did the right thing here?
We as Floridians are accustomed to hurricanes. Yes. It's running out, getting tarps, water, batteries, and whatnot. And you're seeing a run on those kind of items. We're there, there's no indication the water supply is going to be tainted, and you can't find a case of water anywhere. Toilet paper. We all see that. Everybody's seen that. Yeah.
And I think, I'll answer this question. People are saying, why are people getting toilet paper? I think it's because your neighbor got it. You feel like you got to get it. And then that just extrapolates to the hundreds of thousands of people. And that's what creates it.
Which is the overreaction to it. One person had it. So ultimately, there's no need for, people to run out. And the concern is now that everybody's doing it. So you feel like you have to as well. So you have food for your families.
Yes.
But certain items, like I said, you don't. there's nothing wrong with making sure you're washing your hands. If you don't have it, using this hand sanitizer, with at least 60% alcohol. There's nothing wrong with cleaning. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that stuff to help prevent it. But when we start having problems, or we're having, there's hasn't been any that I know of yet, but fist fights in stores over toilet paper. I mean, you see it on social media. You'll see it. Some other areas have some issues with that. Mm-hmm. But that's the overreaction side of it. So, just like I said, just follow steps, maintain, your personal health, and you'll be fine.
So I want to go back to with our deputies. Let's say they do come in contact with somebody who let's say they do test positive for coronavirus, and maybe they are feeling the symptoms. Do we work with local hospitals as well? Like, this is where you're going to go, or do we have those sort of protocols in place if we know for certain one of our deputies has contracted the virus? What happens then?
Just going to rely on the advice of their healthcare professionals.
Okay.
So where their doctor sends them, or if they go right to the ER. We're very fortunate here in Orlando that our healthcare system does a phenomenal job for not only planning for these, but they actually practice every year. They do large scale exercises with multiple casualties, and they have resources available to them that they do a really good job. I know one of the local hospitals just did a big exercise about a month and a half ago, and ironically, before really this took off like it did. So they know what they have in place, and they practice it, which is so important to do when you have an emergency like this.
Have we practiced an emergency? Has the sheriff's office practiced an emergency like this?
We have. We actually participate in those exercises with them. That's the best way to do those exercises. Is it's us, the fire department, the hospitals, and we have personnel that go out there and will work with them. Depending on the scale of the exercise, depends on who will be involved, but we do practice with them, and it helps us our planning phases too. But when we can sit down and say, look, we tried this, it was applicable 10 years ago, but technology's changed, or whatever, the hospital doesn't do this anymore. So they're very beneficial to do.
How about you, Lieutenant Bartlett? Do you have any recommendations for people who are listening to this, how they can maybe help combat this pandemic?
Just follow the recommendations of the CDC and what the local health officials are saying. Like I said, this is being a pandemic. This truly is ultimately we're relying on our healthcare professionals to provide us the guidance, and we're obviously, a lot of the businesses are following it and doing what they can to help. So again, the big thing is just remain calm. Relax, and we'll get through this.
Lieutenant Bartlett, thank you so much. I know you're a busy man. I know you got phone calls coming in from all over the country, and so I'm going to let you go, but I really appreciate it. I really appreciate the information, and we will talk to you hopefully when we're through this. We can talk again and maybe go over what worked and what didn't work, but I appreciate your time, and thanks for being on Behind the Star.
All right, thank you very much.
Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe to Behind the Star. You can find us wherever you get your favorite podcasts. Also, follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. Until next time, I'm Jon Busdeker, and this is Behind the Star.